I want to start today's deep dive with a question that, um, honestly, it feels a little bit insulting on the surface.
Oh, I like those.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if I asked you this at a dinner party, you might kind of look at me sideways. But the sources we're digging into today, they pose it with total seriousness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
The question is, are writing and communication actually skills?
Okay, yeah. I can see why that feels deceptive because the immediate, the knee-jerk reaction is, of course they are. What are you talking about?
I mean, right. We go to school for, what, 12, 16, sometimes 20 years. We take classes literally called language arts.
We get graded on it.
We get graded on it. We learn grammar. We learn how to structure an essay. We learn where the comma is supposed to go. It feels exactly like learning to code or learning carpentry.
Yeah.
You practice, you get better, you have a skill, end of story.
Right. Case closed. Why is this even a conversation?
Exactly. Why is this a debate?
Well, it's a debate because if you stop there, at that definition of skill, you are missing this massive underwater portion of the iceberg. The research we're looking at argues that, yeah, technically you can train these things, but treating them just like coding or carpentry is actually kind of dangerous. It leads us to undervalue them until the whole system collapses.
Dangerous in what way? Like how?
Because coding is a utility. If I write good code, the machine does a thing. That's the transaction. If I build a table, I now have a place to put my coffee.
It's functional.
It's functional. But writing and communication, the sources argue these are actually meta skills. And going even a step further, they call them cognitive technologies.
Cognitive technologies. Okay, that sounds like something straight out of a cyberpunk novel. It sounds like I need to get a chip installed in my brain.
In a way, writing is the chip. It's an external hard drive that we invented, to hack our own biology.
Oh.
And that's really the mission for our deep dive today. We're not just going to talk about how to write a better email, though I promise we will get to that.
Good.
We're going to look at why writing literally changes the physical structure of how you think, how literacy used to be a weapon of mass control. And then we have to talk about the giant asteroid hitting the planet right now, which is AI.
Right. Which I have to assume is where that distinction between skill and meta skill becomes like life or death for people's careers.
It's everything. Because once a machine can handle the syntax, the skill part, what is left for the human?
What's her job?
The answer, and this is where we're going to land, is judgment.
Okay. All right. So let's back up. I want to go back to that term you just used, meta skill. It has a little bit of a corporate jargon feel to it, a synergy, paradigm shift.
I get that.
Is this an actually useful distinction, or is it just a fancy way of saying being good at talking?
No, it's a critical distinction. And I think the best way to explain it is with an analogy. Let's say you're a world-class architect, just brilliant.
Have incredible spatial reasoning. You can visualize a whole cathedral in your mind, down to the last screw, the last bolt. That is your core skill.
Right.
But if you cannot communicate that vision to a client who has, let's say, zero imagination, or to a construction crew that needs hyper-precise instructions, does your architectural skill actually exist in the real world?
Well, in your head it does, but no, the building doesn't get built.
Exactly. The building stays a fantasy. And that's why communication is a meta skill. It is the skill that dictates the absolute ceiling of every other skill you possess.
It's a multiplier.
It is a multiplier, yes. If your communication skill is a 0, then your total output is 0. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are at the core technical task.
It's the ultimate bottleneck.
It is the bottleneck for every single talent. And the source material we're looking at, it breaks this down into 4 dimensions, which I found really helpful for clarifying why we all struggle with it.
Okay, what are they? So the first one is what we just said, the skill dimension. That's your vocabulary, your pacing, grammar, the stuff you can drill.
The stuff we get A's and B's on in school.
The stuff we get graded on, right. But then you have the second one, the meta skill dimension, that multiplier effect we were just talking about.
Right.
And then comes the third one. And this is the one that really trips people up. Cognitive technology.
You mentioned this before. The idea that writing isn't just output. It's not just getting what's in my head onto the page.
Exactly. There's this really common misconception, and I hear this from incredibly smart people all the time. They say something like, oh, I know what I want to say. I just need to find the time to write it down.
Oh, I've said that a million times. I have the idea. I just need to type it out.
The research we're looking at suggests that for complex thoughts, that is almost biologically impossible.
Wait, really? But I feel like I have ideas in the shower all the time. I have these big epiphanies.
You have impressions in the shower, you have vague associations, But the source argues that for strong writers, the reality isn't, I write what I mean. It's, I know what I mean because I wrote it.
So the act of writing is the thinking. It's not the receipt for the thinking that already happened.
Precisely. Just think about your working memory for a second. Your brain can hold, what, maybe 3 or 4 variables at once, tops?
Yeah, if I'm lucky.
So if you're trying to construct a complex argument that has, 7 different points and 3 potential contradictions, your brain physically cannot hold that entire structure in place. It's not designed to. It will smooth over the gaps. It will make you feel like it all makes sense.
Oh, I know that feeling so well. You think you've got this work of genius, this epiphany, and then you try to explain it to your partner or friend, and about 2 sentences in, you realize you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, that is the cognitive technology failing you, or rather, that's you realizing you haven't actually used the technology yet.
Yeah.
Writing allows you to offload the processing onto the paper or the screen. The page holds the structure, so your brain is now free to critique it. It exposes the contradictions that your brain was very kindly hiding from you to keep you happy.
That's humbling.
Yeah.
So writing is basically a way to force your brain to stop lying to itself about how smart it is.
That is a beautiful way to put it, yes. It forces prioritization. It forces you to say, this is more important than that, and it exposes those logic gaps.
Okay.
And this all leads to the 4th dimension, which is that writing is always, always a relational act.
Even if I'm just writing in a private journal.
Even then, you're writing to a future version of yourself, or a past version.
Yeah.
You are always engaging with a mind, even if it's your own.
This creates a huge perception gap in the professional world, right?
Massive. We see it all the time. You have 2 employees. Let's say they're both smart, both work hard. Employee A writes correctly. Perfect grammar, standard corporate formatting. Employee B writes accurately.
Okay, I want to push on that for a second. Because in a lot of corporate settings, isn't correct the whole goal. You don't want to get creative with a compliance report. Correct is what keeps you out of trouble. Accurate sounds, I don't know, a little risky.
It all depends on how you define accurate. And in this context, accurate doesn't mean creative or fluffy. It means accurate to the human reality of the situation.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's take a scenario. You have to send an email to a client telling them their big project is delayed.
The worst email.
Yeah.
The dreaded it's going to be late email.
The absolute worst. So employee A writes a correct email. It says, "Dear client, per our agreement, we are hereby notifying you of a delay. The new delivery date is X. Regards."
Grammatically perfect. Factually true.
And cold as ice. The client reads that and their stomach just drops.
Yeah, they feel like a number.
Now, employee B writes accurately. They stop and they think, okay, who is this person? This delay means they're under pressure from their boss. This delay creates anxiety. So they write something like, "Hi, Jane. I know this delay puts you in a tough spot with your launch team. Here's exactly why it happened. Here's our plan to fix it. And here's a paragraph you can literally copy and paste to send to your boss to get the heat off you."
Whoa. Okay, I see it now. Employee A was writing to the contract. Employee B was writing to the person.
And that is the entire difference between a simple utility and a meta skill. Employee B just saved the relationship. Employee A just covered their legal bases.
This all implies that there isn't just one way to be a good writer or a good communicator. We tend to lump them all together, like, oh, she's a good communicator. But the way a therapist communicates is totally, completely different from how a drill sergeant communicates.
It's wildly different. And this is actually one of my favorite parts of the research we have for today. It breaks down communication into 7 distinct archetypes. Because if you try to be good at all of them at once, you just end up being mediocre at all of them.
All right, let's walk through these. I think this would be useful for people listening to try and spot themselves, or maybe more importantly, spot the friction they're having with their boss. Because I have a feeling a lot of workplace conflict is just 2 different archetypes talking past each other.
100%. It's an archetype clash. So the first one is the empathy-driven communicator.
This is the Brené Brown, the Fred Rogers type of person.
Exactly. And the goal here is very, very specific. It is to make the other person feel seen and feel safe.
But is that just about being nice? Because I feel like nice can be a trap sometimes.
It's definitely not just being nice. Nice is polite. Nice is glossing over things to avoid awkwardness. Empathy is about witnessing someone's reality. Think about how Mr. Rogers talked to kids. He didn't use that high-pitched, sing-songy baby talk. He spoke slowly, he looked right at the camera, and he validated really difficult feelings. He talked about death, divorce, anger. The core skill of the empathy communicator is perspective taking. It is consciously dropping your own agenda to inhabit someone else's emotional world for a moment.
Which is exhausting, by the way. You can't do that all day long.
No, you absolutely can't. And it's often terrible for efficiency. If you need to evacuate a burning building, you do not want an empathy communicator leading the way.
Right. You don't need someone saying, I can see you're feeling anxious about the rapidly approaching flames.
Let's unpack that feeling. No. You want someone screaming, go left.
Go left now.
Yes.
Which brings us to the second archetype, the persuasive communicator.
The Martin Luther King Jr., the Barack Obama, the Dale Carnegie types. Right. The goal here is different. It's to change minds and build belief. And I want to be really clear, this isn't just about charisma. We often think persuasion is just having this magic personality, but it's actually highly technical.
How?
It's about sequencing. If you analyze a great speech, like from MLK Jr., he isn't just rambling inspirationally. He is laying down a premise that everyone in the audience agrees with. We believe in freedom. Yes. Then he adds a layer of complication. But some are not free. Then he offers a moral resolution. He's leading the audience down a very specific path, one breadcrumb at a time.
So by the end, they feel like they arrived at the conclusion on their own.
Precisely. A great persuasive communicator respects the audience's intelligence, but very deliberately guides their focus. They know that if they state the controversial conclusion too early, before building the foundation, the audience will just shut down and reject it. They have to build the bridge first.
Okay, so that's 2. Number 3 is the rapport builder. Now, this sounds kind of similar to the empathy one, but the notes say it's different.
It is different, and the distinction is important. Empathy is primarily about creating emotional safety. Rapport is about creating trust and systematically lowering defenses. This is the domain of great therapists, skilled diplomats, and honestly, the best salespeople in the world.
The kind of person you find yourself telling your deepest secrets to 5 minutes after meeting them.
Exactly. Think of someone like Esther Perel or Carl Rogers. Their primary skill isn't necessarily, I feel your pain. It's, I am creating a space where you can be totally honest without any fear of shame. It's an invitation. In a high-stakes negotiation, this is everything. If the other side's defenses are up, no new information can get in. The rapport builder's job is to lower the drawbridge.
Then we get number 4, which feels like the absolute opposite of lowering the drawbridge, the conflict and crisis communicator.
Yeah, this is the high-stakes table. Think Chris Moss, the former FBI hostage negotiator. Or, on the spiritual side, someone like Thich Nhat Hanh. The goal here is singular. De-escalate suffering and limit damage.
I feel like most people think they're good at this, but in reality, when a crisis actually hits, they just panic louder than everyone else in the room.
That's the default human reaction. It's our mirror neurons. You scream, I scream, we escalate together. The crisis communicator has trained themselves to consciously override that instinct. They absorb heat. They are the heat sink in the system.
I like that. A heat sink.
When you yell at them, they get quieter. Their sentences get shorter and more deliberate. Their goal isn't to be right, and it isn't even to be liked. It is purely to stabilize the situation.
De-escalate. That's the key word there.
That is the whole game. And you can see how this archetype is in direct conflict with the persuasive one. If you're in a heated argument with your spouse and you try to be persuasive, trying to win the argument with flawless logic and brilliant sequencing, you are probably going to make it 100 times worse.
Been there, yes.
That's a moment that calls for crisis communication. You need to lower the emotional temperature, not win the debate.
That is painfully accurate. Okay, number 5, the creative and narrative writer.
The storytellers, your Toni Morrisons, your George Orwells, Ursula Le Guin, their goal is entirely different. It's to make meaning felt. They're not telling you something. They are simulating a life for you to inhabit. The core skill here is subtext.
Saying it without saying it.
Huh?
The iceberg theory.
Exactly. In a business report, you want zero subtext. You want explicit, unambiguous clarity. In a novel, if you explain everything explicitly, it's just boring, it's condescending. You want the reader to do the work. You want them to connect the dots and feel the emotion bubble up from within them.
Now, you contrast that with number 6, the technical and precision communicator.
My personal heroes, people like Donald Knuth, the computer scientist, or, Strunk and White, the authors of The Elements of Style, their goal is the polar opposite of the creative writer. It is to eliminate ambiguity entirely.
The notes call this empathy in disguise, which I admit I thought was a bit of a stretch at first, because technical manuals feel like the opposite of empathy. They feel cold and robotic.
But think about the user's experience. Imagine it's 11 o'clock at night. You're trying to assemble a crib for your baby who's coming tomorrow. You are tired, you are stressed, you are frustrated. If that manual is vague or creative or trying to be persuasive with you, you will lose your mind.
You will throw it against the wall. You just want to know which screw goes in which hole.
Exactly. The technical communicator is saying, I respect your time and your sanity so much that I have been absolutely painstakingly precise. I have anticipated every single place you might get confused, and I have solved it for you in advance. That is a profound act of care. It's just not warm care, it's functional care.
And that brings us to the last one, number 7, the translators and bridges.
These are the rare birds, the Carl Sagans, the Neil deGrasse Tysons, people who can speak both expert and public fluently.
Bilingual thought.
Yes. And the real danger here is what people call dumbing it down. A bad translator lies to the audience to make a concept simple. A good translator uses what the source calls compression without betrayal.
Ooh, I like that.
They simplify the language without losing the essential truth of the concept. And it is incredibly difficult because it means you have to understand the topic so deeply that you know which parts you can cut away without damaging the core.
So we have these 7 archetypes.
Yeah.
And the problem, as you said, is that usually a company will just put out a job description that says, needs good communication skills, without having any idea which one they actually need.
Exactly. You hire a persuasive person for a technical role, and then you wonder why your documentation is a mess. But hey, everyone really likes the guy.
So this leads us to a bit of a historical puzzle. If these skills are so powerful, I mean, if they determine our agency, our relationships, our ability to build skyscrapers, why do we treat them like they're just basics? Why do we just assume everyone can do them?
It's what the research calls the illusion of competence.
Right.
And it's because the barrier to entry is 0. You don't need a license to speak. You don't need a certificate to send a text message.
Right.
Because we all participate in the activity, we assume we are all competent at it.
It's like the Dunning-Kruger effect on a massive societal scale.
It absolutely is. Real effective communication is tiered. Tier 1 is just, can you be understood? Can you exchange basic information? Most people get there. Tier 2 is, can you be trusted? That's much harder. That involves rapport, clarity, consistency. Tier 3 is, can you actually change how someone sees the world? That is incredibly rare. But because we all operate comfortably in Tier 1, we think we're all playing the same game.
But biologically, we aren't even wired for the written part of this, are we? I mean, kids learn to talk almost automatically.
That is the crucial distinction. Speech is biological. It's an adaptation. If you drop a baby in any village on Earth, they will learn to speak that language without a single formal lesson. It's hardwired into our genome.
But writing.
No culture in human history has ever accidentally invented writing.
It's a technology.
It's a piece of software. It's an invention. It has to be taught. It has to be enforced. You have to physically rewire a child's brain to look at these abstract little squiggles on a page and hallucinate a sound and a meaning. It is a massive, unnatural cognitive load.
And for most of human history, we just didn't bother trying to get everyone to do it.
Why would we? This is the part of the history I wanted to dig into. Because today, we view illiteracy as a failure of the system, a tragedy. But for thousands of years, illiteracy was the system.
It was the feature, not the bug.
It's the feature, not the bug. Go back to ancient Egypt or medieval Europe. If you're a farmer, if you're a laborer, why on earth would you need to read? There are no street signs, there are no newspapers, there are no IKEA manuals.
You learn your trade by watching your dad, and he learned it from his dad. It's all passed down.
Exactly. Information was oral. It was communal. But more importantly, power depended entirely on controlling the flow of information. If you wanted to know what the law was, you had to go ask a scribe or a magistrate.
And if you wanted to know what God wanted?
You had to ask a priest. They were the gatekeepers. They had the API key to the database. Literacy was a high-permission activity.
So keeping the general population illiterate was a very effective way of ensuring they couldn't question the rules.
It was a system of absolute control. If you can't read the contract, you can't dispute the terms of the contract. If you can't read the sacred texts, you can't argue with the priest's interpretation of them.
So what broke that open? Was it just the invention of the printing press?
The printing press was the technical catalyst. It made it possible because suddenly books were cheaper to produce. But the real driver, the thing that made literacy mandatory, was the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the nation-state.
Factories and armies.
Factories and armies. Think about the logistics of running a modern army or a giant factory. You can't personally stand there and tell 10,000 soldiers what to do. You need written orders. You need standardized manuals. You need workers who can read the safety warning on the machine so they don't blow up the factory.
So the government basically said, okay, fine. We need to teach everyone to read, not because we want them to be enlightened poets, but because we need them to operate the machinery of the state.
It's a cynical view, but it's largely true. It was an economic imperative. And suddenly, in the span of maybe 150 years, writing went from this mystical high priest superpower to, well, to background infrastructure.
It became like electricity or plumbing.
Exactly. You don't think about it at all. You just expect it to work. You only notice it when it breaks.
And because it's background infrastructure,
Yeah.
we stop valuing it. We stop seeing it as a skill, and we start seeing it as just, I don't know, being a functional adult.
Until you lose it. Which brings us to this thought experiment in the source material. And I have to say, this part really stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, I wanted to sit with this for a minute because it's powerful. The experiment asks us to imagine waking up tomorrow in a country where we don't know the language at all.
Right. And I don't want to just gloss over that. I want you and everyone listening to actually close your eyes for a second. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning in, let's say, rural Vietnam, and you don't speak a single word of Vietnamese and you can't read the script.
Okay, I'm there. It's humid.
You are still you. You are still intelligent. You still have your memories, your sense of humor, your intentions, your plans for the day. But you walk out onto the street, you're hungry, you want breakfast. How do you get it?
I, too. I guess I point, I make gestures, I mime eating.
You point, you gesture. Maybe they understand. Maybe they think you're insane. You are relying entirely on their patience and their goodwill. Now let's raise the stakes. Imagine you trip and you break your leg.
Oh, God.
You're in agony. Someone helps you. You're taken to a hospital. You see signs all over the walls, but to you, they're just meaningless shapes. A nurse comes over and starts talking to you. You can't explain what happened. You can't ask if it's serious. You can't ask if they are going to operate. You have no idea what's happening to your own body.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
You feel completely powerless. You feel small. You feel like a child again.
You have lost your agency. That is the key word from the source. Without language, your intelligence is trapped inside your own skull. You become a burden. You become, in that context, socially disabled. The source calls language a mobility system for the mind.
And when you frame it like that, as a mobility system, it just makes the stakes so much higher. It's not about can you write a pretty essay for your English class. It's can you move through the world on your own terms?
Exactly. And this is the essential bridge to talking about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Because we have to understand what AI actually is in this specific context.
Right, because if language is a mobility system, then AI is what? Is it a wheelchair? Is it a jetpack?
It's a prosthetic. Let's go back to that person in the foreign country. If I hand them a device, a universal translator, right out of Star Trek, what have I just done for them?
You've given them their agency back instantly. They can order their own food. They can talk to the doctor. They can tell a joke.
Exactly. For the person who struggles with writing, maybe they're dyslexic, maybe English is their second language, or maybe they just never learned the weird unwritten code of corporate speak AI as that universal translator. It smooths out the tone. It provides the structural scaffolding. It allows them to participate fully in the economy and in society.
That sounds objectively good. That sounds humane.
It is humane. It's a massive leveling of the playing field. But and here's the central tension of our time. If you are the skilled writer, if you're the person who spent 20 years mastering that meta skill,
You feel like the guy who spent 20 years learning how to harvest ice from a frozen lake by hand, and suddenly someone down the street invents the refrigerator.
it feels like a theft. It feels like a complete collapse of your differentiation. You built your professional identity on being the articulate one. You were the one who writes the good proposals. And now, a junior employee with a ChatGPT subscription can produce a proposal that looks 90% as good as yours in 30 seconds.
And the grief there is real. I think we need to validate that for a minute. It's not just old people yelling at clouds. It's a genuine loss of status and identity.
It absolutely is. It's the commoditization of what used to be your superpower. But the source warns us very strongly against falling into what it calls a false binary.
What's the false binary?
The idea that it's either human illiteracy or AI perfection, or that AI makes everyone equal, it doesn't. AI compresses the bottom and the middle tiers of skill. It handles functional communication. It does that tier 1 stuff, Can you be understood?
Hmm.
Flawlessly.
But it doesn't automatically do the tier 3 stuff, changing how people see the world.
No, not at all. And this is where the unwinnable perception of AI comes in. Have you noticed how we talk about AI writing?
You mean how we critique it?
Yes. If an AI writes something bad, it hallucinates a fact or uses a really weird, clunky phrase, what do we all say?
We all point and laugh. We say, see, it's stupid. The robots will never replace us. We mock it.
Right. But what happens if an AI writes something good? Something genuinely moving or insightful?
We say, that's cheating, or it's just a soulless mimic, or who prompted it?
Exactly. It is a no-win scenario for the machine. If it's bad, it's useless. If it's good, it's deceptive. A human gets a narrative of growth. If a student writer improves, we praise them. If a machine improves, we get suspicious.
So where does that leave the human writer? I mean, if the machine just keeps getting better and better, are we just obsolete?
No, but our role fundamentally shifts. AI becomes a skill multiplier, not a replacement. And this is a really crucial nuance.
Okay.
If you're a bad writer, you have no taste, no strategic judgment, and you use AI, you will just produce polished garbage. It'll look like a good email, it will be grammatically perfect, but it will lack that accurate quality we talked about. It will be completely tone deaf to the human situation.
But if you're a good writer?
If you are a good writer with good judgment, AI makes you dangerous. In a good way. You can iterate 10 times faster. You can say to the machine, give me 5 different versions of this opening hook. And your human taste allows you to instantly pick the one that's brilliant. You use it to sharpen your structure, to challenge your own assumptions. You become the editor-in-chief of your own thoughts with an army of interns.
So the human skill shifts from generating the words to judging the words.
Bingo. And that brings us right to the climax of this whole deep dive.
Hmm.
If AI handles the syntax, the grammar, the vocabulary, the only thing of value left for the human to do is judgment.
Judgment. It is such a heavy word, and usually when we use it, we mean it negatively, like, don't judge me, or she's so judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
But here we're talking about it as the single most important professional necessity.
We are talking about it as the ultimate cognitive asset, but we have to be really precise in defining what good judgment actually is. Because I think most people assume good judgment just means being right all the time.
Yeah, isn't it?
No. The source has a much better definition. It defines good judgment not as being right, but as being corrigible.
Corrigible, that is an old school word. It
Okay.
means capable of being corrected, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Good judgment isn't about knowing the right answer instantly. It's about having a process. It involves what the source calls provisional confidence. You say, based on all the evidence I have right now, this is the best path forward. But
I could be wrong.
I am actively watching for signals that I am wrong. It requires perspective awareness, knowing you have blind spots, and it requires what the source calls elastic skepticism.
I love that phrase, elastic skepticism, because usually skepticism feels so rigid, it just feels like a brick wall. I don't believe you.
Right. Rigid skepticism is just cynicism, and cynicism is lazy. It's an excuse not to think. Everyone lies, so I won't trust anyone. Elastic skepticism, on the other hand, it stretches. It says, I am skeptical of this claim, but I am open to being convinced by evidence. It asks the most important question.
What's that?
What would it take to change my mind?
That is the magic question, isn't it?
Good.
What would change my mind? If the answer to that is nothing, then you aren't using judgment anymore. You're in a cult.
You're operating on dogma.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which leads us to the definition of bad judgment. If good judgment is corrigible, what is bad judgment?
Is it just ignorance?
Yeah.
Just being dumb?
No, some of the smartest people in the world have the absolute worst judgment. Bad judgment is usually judgment under what the source calls emotional capture.
Emotional capture. Give me a real-world example of that. Is this like having a fit of road rage?
Road rage is a very visceral, short-term version of it. But think about it in a business meeting. Let's say you proposed a big project. It's your baby. You've poured 6 months of your life into it. Then, right before the final approval, new data comes in showing the market has totally shifted and the project will almost certainly fail.
Oof. I can feel the tightening in my chest just imagining that.
That tightening in your chest, that is emotional capture. Your identity has fused with the project. If the project is wrong, then you feel like you are wrong. And if you're wrong, you lose status, you look foolish. So what do? Do you look at the data objectively?
No. I fight it.
Yeah.
I attack the data. I say the methodology is flawed. I say we just need to market it harder.
You double down. That is bad judgment in action. It's not because you're stupid. It's because you are protecting your ego. The source has this great line for it. Don't be wrong in front of your people.
That's the killer. The fear of public shame. The fear of looking weak.
And this scales up perfectly from the individual to the group. This is how we get institutional inertia. Why do giant successful companies fail? Why did Kodak miss the boat on digital cameras? Why did Blockbuster laugh at Netflix? It wasn't because they didn't have smart people working there.
It's that the institution itself had an identity. We are a film company. We are a video rental company.
Exactly. And the moment the central question shifts from what is true to what preserves our identity, that organization is doomed. Dissent suddenly feels like danger. If you're the person who raises your hand and says, hey, I think this whole streaming thing might be the future, you aren't just making a business suggestion, you are attacking the tribe's very soul.
So the tribe expels you, or at the very least it silences you.
And that's how you get an echo chamber. We tend to think echo chambers form because people hate the truth or are stupid, but the research says no echo chambers form because they reward social safety.
We're just wired to want to belong.
We are social primates. For 99% of our history, being kicked out of the tribe was a death sentence, so we are exquisitely tuned to social signals. Agreement earns approval, doubt earns suspicion. If I agree with the boss, I get a nod and a smile. If I question the boss, I get a frown. Over time, the frowns get filtered out of the room, and you end up with a dozen smart people sitting around a table, all nodding in agreement as the ship sinks.
And often, they use scapegoating to deal with the anxiety of it all.
Right.
That was a really interesting point in the notes.
It's anxiety discharge. When the group knows deep down that things aren't working, the collective anxiety builds up. But instead of fixing the root problem, which would mean admitting they were wrong, it's much easier to find a target to blame.
Right.
It's the regulators, it's the media, it's that one department that's dropping the ball. They blast all their pent-up anxiety at the scapegoat, and for a brief moment, they feel better. They feel unified and morally righteous.
But the ship is still sinking.
The ship is still sinking.
Yeah.
Because reality is, and always will be, undefeated.
Okay, so this paints a pretty grim picture of human psychology. We're wired to be tribal, defensive, and emotionally captured.
Yeah.
How do we fight this? The source gives us this visual metaphor that I found really helpful, the tuning board.
Yes. I want you to visualize a big mixing board in a recording studio, with all the vertical sliders for different instruments.
Okay, got it.
But instead of labels like bass and treble and vocals, imagine the labels on the sliders are trust, curiosity, skepticism, and boundaries.
Okay. Trust, curiosity, skepticism, boundaries.
Bad judgment, or what we could call dogma, is when you lock one of those sliders permanently at 100% or at 0%.
Okay, so if I lock my trust slider at 100% all the time,
You're just naive. You're the person who falls for every Ponzi scheme. You have high trust and low boundaries. You are going to get manipulated.
and if I lock skepticism at 100%,
Then you're a bitter cynic or a conspiracy theorist. You reject everything out of hand. You can't learn anything new because nothing gets through that filter.
so wisdom is constantly moving the sliders.
Wisdom is the act of constant retuning based on the context of the situation. If I'm reading a peer-reviewed scientific paper, I need my curiosity slider way up and my skepticism at a moderate level.
Okay.
But if I'm buying a used car, I need to crank my skepticism slider way up and my boundary slider way up.
And if I'm listening to a friend vent about their really bad day,
Yeah. You need your trust and empathy sliders at 100%. You turn your skepticism and fact-checking sliders all the way down to 0. You don't need to fact-check their feelings.
that's a really useful way to think about it. It's not about being a skeptical person as a personality trait. It's about applying the right setting for the right room.
Precisely. And this all leads to the ultimate goal, which is to achieve confidence without dogma.
Which sounds like a paradox on the surface. How can you be confident if you're not totally sure you're right?
Confidence says, I stand here. It owns a position. It says, this is my decision and I take responsibility for it. Dogma says, this ground I'm standing on must never, ever move.
Ah, okay. So confidence is about ownership of a decision, while dogma is about permanence of a belief.
Yes. The healthiest thinkers, the people with the best judgment, build their identity around their process, not around their positions. If your identity is, I am the person who believes X, you are trapped. If X is ever proven to be wrong, your identity is destroyed.
But if your identity is, I am the person who follows the evidence wherever it leads,
Then being proven wrong is actually a victory. It's a win, because it means your process worked. You found an error in your thinking, and you updated your view of the world. You are free.
that really is the meta skill of life, isn't it?
It is. And in a world that's about to be flooded with AI-generated text, that process, that judgment, is the only durable value you have left.
So let's bring this all the way back to the beginning. We started by asking if writing is even a skill. we realized it's a cognitive technology that literally structures our thoughts. We looked at the history of it, from the scribes to the factories. We saw the disruption of AI, how it's giving agency to some and taking status from others.
And we landed on this realization that as the generating part of communication becomes automated and cheap, the judging part becomes the premium, priceless asset.
The source material had this one final twist on it that I keep thinking about. It's about the infinite supply of text.
This is the economic reality that we are all about to face. For all of human history, producing fluent, grammatical, well-structured text was expensive. It took a lot of human time and brain power.
And now, the cost of producing it is effectively zero.
Right. We are about to be flooded with a literal infinity of text. Infinite emails, infinite marketing copy, infinite articles, infinite reports. And basic economics tells us that when the supply of something goes to infinity, its value goes to zero.
So, good writing, just in the sense of being grammatical and well-structured, is about to be worth $0.
The only thing that will carry value, the only thing that will be scarce, is knowing why something should be written at all. The scarcity is no longer in the how, it's in the why.
Why does this specific thing need to be said? Why right now? And why to this particular person?
That is the human element. That is the judgment. That is everything.
So here's the provocative thought for everyone listening. As you go about your week, you're going to send hundreds of messages. You're going to use AI tools. You're going to talk to your team. Don't just think about the output. Don't just ask yourself, is this correct?
Ask yourself, is this accurate to the human moment? And am I willing to be revised?
That's the real test. If you can answer yes to that, you've got the skill that actually matters. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.